Hey guys, it's Oberstadt, and in today's video I'm going to be swatching out the BH Cosmetics, the Capricorn palette, and the Capricorn shades out of the two big palettes, and then I will be breaking down and discussing the actual Capricorn sign and the colors that should have been in this palette. So, because we only have two shades in the big palettes, let's go ahead and get started with the big ones. Oh my goodness, and then my counter is now covered in shimmer. Let me get rid of that. If you guys are new to my channel, I do like doing palette swatches just so you can see kind of a little bit of information on the shadows, how they might perform. I also like doing individual swatch videos for the palettes so that you can see the colors, because sometimes if you view a palette online, you're going to see like their promotional photos. So like this online might look completely different than it does to me, or on your phone or your tablet, your smart TV or your computer. So the Capricorn shade out of the Love Signs palette, I guess we'll go in order. Let's do this one. So we have a matte shade and a shimmer shade. So here is the matte shade and the shimmer shade, and I will do double swatches on each. Now, the matte shade is like an olivey green brown, and it's kind of an interesting color. It's like a cool undertone brown with like an olive hint. The shimmer shade is kind of like the color of pyrite. Now remember that, because that's going to be important in the comparison video, or the comparison part of this, where I start talking about what colors it should be. Then we have the Capricorn shade in here, which is this really bright turquoise color, and this real pastel, like light blue-ish green shade. So let me grab these two colors. Now the shimmer formula in this palette is different than the original palette. They are a lot more chunky. I like completely missed the swatch on that one. That's my bad. Now, you would think for Capricorn shades, you're like, why in the world did they pick an aquamarine color? Like, this makes no sense to me. It didn't make any sense to me when you see the two looks with the two palettes, with the Love Signs and the Capricorn palette. I even talk about that in the video. I'm like, what were they thinking? Well, now that I've done some research, I know what they were thinking and why they chose this color. So that's another thing to keep in mind for the next, after I get done swatching these, because I will switch sides and use my other arm. So then you have the actual little palette, which looks, kind of blah. I didn't have anything like this in my collection, so I was actually excited about it. So we have the first three shades here, which are like varying shades of brown. You have a neutral undertone, a warm undertone, and a cool undertone brown. So you're neutral, you're warm, and you're cool. Now, for those that don't know about undertones and shadows, you're going to be looking for whether a shade pulls like more orange or red, whereas a cool undertone is going to, a warm undertone is going to pull orange or yellow, whereas a cool undertone is going to pull more like blue, purple, and red. When you look at the color spectrum, usually like bluer shades or shades that have like hints of purple in them are going to be a little bit more on the cool tone. So here are the first three shades. Kind of boring and blah. Great for transition shades for a variety of skin colors, or if you're fair like me, you use something like this and then you darken with that. So then we get into the next three colors, which is this dark brown, which is also a cool, this neutral brown, and this is the first shimmer, which is kind of like a burgundy shade. So we have this really cool toned brown, kind of like, oh, what is that shade called? I'll think of it in a minute. Or I'll put it on the screen via editing. And then you have this like really pretty like rose toned color. Let me go ahead and pick up double swatches. And these two matte shades are kind of more crumbly than the other ones in the palette. So they did make a mess all over the counter as well. Again, I'll have to remember what the name of this shade, this kind of color It's really an interesting kind of like brown shade. If you think of like when you take wood and you coat it with tar, that kind of color that wood gets after a while, after it's sat and baked and the tar has like soaked in so it cures a little bit better. That's what I think of when I see this color. And this is a kind of a more neutral, kind of leaning warm brown, and then you have this really pretty like cranberry kind of color. Then we get into the last three, which is this one here, this shimmer, and then the center shade. This is more like a purple gray brown shade, and then you have this beautiful like bronze tone, and then the center shade, which is a really pretty like champagne-y color. Now with the shimmers in this palette, you don't have to pick up double swatches, but because I did double swatches with the other shades, I figured might as well be consistent. And the those last two shimmer shades I do find are crumbly, and the center shade is also kind of crumbly. Now in this we have like a purpley brown shade here, but this is a cool tone. Then you have a warm tone bronze, which is like brass and copper mixed. You can see the copper hints to it, but it has the brass base. And then you have this really nice, pretty neutral, like champagne color. Okay, so here are all of the colors that BH Cosmetics did pick for this palette, or the palettes, I should say, between the two big ones and the little one. Now I'm going to be discussing a few characteristics about the Capricorn shades, or Capricorns, and what shades should be in these palettes, and I'm going to be using other BH palettes to make this conclusion for myself, and what colors they could have gone with for this little palette besides just these really neutral, everyday kind of colors. Now for this part I had to switch sides, so I have another arm. These are all of the BH palettes I own, between all the little mini guys and all of the other palettes that I own. So these are all of my BH Cosmetics palettes. This is actually the majority of my eyeshadow collection are from BH. Now my friend Sylvia, who's also a subscriber, helped me do this. This is actually a printout from her page that she worked on. And for Capricorns and stuff, they're an earth sign, definitely an earth sign. But when I pulled information, and I mean I have like 32 pages of information that I pulled for this video specifically, and I don't even know if you're going to be able to, yeah, you can see it, kind of, you just can't read it. But I pulled all of this, and I pulled pictures, and I pulled every piece of information that I could find about like the actual zodiac signs. And then, of course, I have all of my reference links down at the very bottom, because I'm one of those nerdy people that always likes to give credit is due. So any information I use in this video, I will most likely leave links in the description box for it, as well as for the palettes and stuff. So the Capricorn sign is an earth sign. They are a cardinal, which is their quality. And it says here their colors are brown and black. Now for the Eastern traditions, like Chinese cultures and stuff like that, they say that Capricorn's colors are white and silver. So I'm like, that's like kind of different than brown and black. So I figured I would pull, we've already got the browns down, but we don't have a black, we don't have white or silver in any of these color combinations. Then going down in here, it talks about, their birth date ranges, which is December 22nd to January 19th. So for those of you that don't know, that December's birthstone is like an aqua blue color, and January's birthstone is a really pretty burgundy, like brownish burgundy color, which is garnet. And it talks about like how dependable they are, reliable they are, things like that when it comes to the Capricorn sign. They're very hardworking signs. My dad is a Capricorn. Trust me, I know all about Capricorns. But then you get into the birthstone list, like stones that are associated with the actual sign, and I will be leaving pictures of these up on the screen. So the very first stone that we have is agate. Now agate is it's made from chalcedony, which chalcedony is a really pretty pastel blue shade. It also looks like angelite. It's a really like light pastel blue shade, which is almost similar to the shimmer in the Love Signs palette. Then we get into azurite, which has like rich like blues, like royal blues, navy blues, and hints of green in the stone. Then you have black tourmaline. Again, you've got black in there. And then you have blue aragonite, which also is a blue-green stone. Then you have chalcopyrite, which is a type of pyrite, which is, if you look at the colors, it would be the second color, which is the color of the shimmer in the actual main Zodiac palette. So that is one of their stone shades. So far we have stone shades in the Love Sign Set palette and one shade out of the original Zodiac palette. And I accidentally just turned my iPad off. Okay, now we're back. Now we have the next stone, which is fluorite. And for those that don't know, fluorite is made of like 3 different types of colors. You have a really pretty like amethyst purple. You have a peridot green shade that is intermixed throughout as well as clear. Then you have garnet, which is those burgundy brown brick reddy shades. Then we have green tourmaline, which is kind of like a peridot green color. We have the stone jet, black. Magnetite, which is also black, and then we have malachite, which is these really beautiful, rich, dark, deep green stones with lighter coloring that runs through them naturally. Then we have ocean jasper. Ocean jasper is like a mix of the shimmer shade from the original Zodiac palette, as well as this bronzy shade and the other 2 shimmer shades that were like the last ones that I swatched. Those are the colors that you will find inside ocean jasper. Then we have peridot, which is, you know, a really light green. Smoky quartz crystal, which is a like gray brown kind of stone, very good grounding stones. And then we have tiger's eye, which is a like bronzy brown. It's really a rich, warm brown tone. Then we've got Vesuvianite, which is more of a peridot green. And then we have Vivanite, which is a richer green. Their tree is the bonsai, which is for traditional, disciplined, and realistic. And then we get into like more things about, you know, the signs and the animals and things like that. I also pulled information on plants. And the funny thing is their plants are actually, let's see where I stuck it. Their birth flower is the pansy or the ivy flower. And most ivy flowers are like a lavender lilac-y shade, which explains that purpley shade in here. Then we have holly, African violet, ivy, philodendron, and a few other things, as well as jasmine flowers. Now, Sylvia pulled plants and colors, and the colors she came up with, and now her books are all in Portuguese. I don't know, it's a version of Spanish. She is in Portugal, so she had to translate it from her language to mine. And so the colors that her book said were dark green, dark brown, gray, black, reddish brown, and indigo blue. Which is also interesting because indigo blue is more of a really rich blue. It's a little bit more warm toned than a royal blue. So it has more warmth to it, whereas royal blue has more cool tone to it. So looking at all of the colors that I've just discussed, let's find shades out of these palettes that you will find that represent shades from the Capricorn sign. This is the Aquarius palette. I'm going to grab this shade right here, which is shade 6. I'm also going to grab this light blue up here, which is shade 8 as well. So we have the very first shade, which is a lilac-y blue purple, and then a pastel blue, and it's a neutral blue. So they are the first 2 colors that I would pick for the Capricorn palette that could have also been included. Now, sticking with only BH palettes is going to limit me shade-wise. Now we get into the Pisces palette. Pisces has a couple of shades. We have the 4th shade in, which is this one. And there's this one. Both of these also match very similarly. I didn't do double swatches. I'm fired. I will go back and do double swatches. I'm sorry. This is probably as close to peridot as I can get with a BH shadow. And then this is more like the chalcedony color. If you mix like these 2, you can get the blue chalcedony. Let me grab the shades out of here again and build them up. So there are 4 more comparable shades to the Capricorn sign that could possibly be used. So this one would be for the ivy flower or pansy, and then you've got 3 that would represent more of the birth stone shades. Now going back into the Big Zodiac Palette, I'm not going to pull black, but I am going to pull this Gemini Shimmer because it's silver. And silver is also supposed to be one of the shades associated with Capricorn. And it's funny that they have this like pyrite color up here for the Capricorn shade, but also the Gemini shade would also work as the Capricorn shade. Now going into the little miniature Taurus palette, we have this really pretty green right here that would also work for Capricorn. The fourth shade in, which is kind of like a greenish silver. And then we have this interesting shade here, which is more like a reddish brown with a hint of like bronze in it. And that's more like a peridot green right there. And it's more like a silvery green that would also work. And then this shade is very interesting because it's kind of like the garnet shade mixed with a really warm base. So that shade would also work for Capricorn as well. Okay, so I went and looked through the Aries and the Gemini palette as well as the Capricorn palette, but I didn't see anything that was screaming Capricorn shade at me. But in here we have this Mercury shade here that looks just like the Ocean Jasper. We also have this Moon shade, which is really kind of reminiscent of like the ivy flower. So I'm going to grab Mercury. I'm also going to grab Moon. And I'm going to grab Milky Way, which is purple and white. All of these would be like perfect shades as well to go in with the Capricorn shades. So we have more like a bronzy shade, which is kind of similar to, it's like a combination of the center shade and the like regular shimmer shade out of the Capricorn palette. You could probably mix them to get something similar to that. Then we have this silvery purple shade, which is lighter than the Capricorn palette has in it. It's kind of like mixing this one and this one together to get that shade. And then you have a really like beautiful warm tone lilac-y shade, which also is about the same shade as the ivy flower. That is if you wanted to bring in something a little bit, you know, more in-depth into the palette. I'm going to pull probably 3 more shades out of this palette. We have Meteor, which is a silvery white turquoise color. We have Comet, which is like this aquamarine color. And then we have Earth, which is this really pretty light blue and white mix. These would also be interesting colors to see in the Capricorn palette because of the fact that they are colors very similar to some of the gemstone matches. And again, some of these shades are going to be similar to some of the other ones that I've pulled. But just shopping through BH's palettes to see what they have color-wise that would have worked for this palette besides just a whole bunch of browns. They could have done a light pastel blue with a matte shade. They could have done like the sea foamy green because the mythical sign for Capricorns is the sea goat. You have the regular mountain goat, which is the actual zodiac sign symbol, but then you have the actual like sea goat, which is what you will find, which is the goat with the fish tail. So I think kind of like the sea foamy green here would be very pretty in that palette as well. It could have even been like the center shade instead of the beige, like neutral tone beige shade that's in the center of that palette. I think picking any of these 3 colors for that center of the palette would have been fine. Electra might also work, which is also it's a neutral tone with pastel blue. Aurora Lights, looking at this, I mean, you could pull Australis, Glowing, Phenomenon, Flashing, or Polar. I'm going to grab Flashing and Phenomenon because both of these like are screaming at me and I ran out of space. So we have Phenomenon and Flashing, and these are very like crumbly shadows. This is more like a topper shade, but it's that silver, and then you have this bronzy copper shade. either of those would have been perfect to throw in. Even if you threw in like a brown that was more like this, it was more matte, and then a shimmer that was like this topper shade, that would have been nice in that palette as well, instead of like, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 matte brown shades. And some are cool, some are warm. I think it would have been nice to see them do maybe one more shimmer in that palette, or gotten away from some of the browns. That would have been nice. Looking at this one, the only shade that I would think could be anywhere near similar to anything would be this green, but I know from using this one, it's also a little bit too bright of a green. It's not quite as yellow as this one, which is why this works better for like the peridot shade. Hell, they could have even thrown in this shade or both of them, because of the fact that, you know, you've got a peridot shade. I'm gonna pull one more out of here. This is it's like a burgundy red shade. Get my finger near enough to swatch it. It has more warmth to it, but it has this really pretty like shift. And maybe it's a little bit too orange to be considered a Capricorn shade, because what I'm looking for is more brown than orange. But a more burgundy shade would have been pretty in that palette as well, instead of like some of these brown tones. I mean, this is a pretty shade. It is kind of like a cranberry shade, but cranberry isn't quite the shade that I would go with that palette. I would use more like a burgundy. So hopefully this is helpful to somebody, you know, comparing what shades I would have liked to have seen different, or maybe added in 1 or 2 of these to go with the Capricorn palette. I mean, you have the really pretty like aquamarine blue, which is similar to like this here in the matte form in the Love Science palette, but then you have like blues like this for the shimmer shade, which is kind of odd. But again, these are what I picked for shades that I would have probably liked to have seen in there. So it makes their Love Science palette a little bit more understandable, I guess you could say, in my eyes, for the simple fact that those are colors that I would have liked to have seen in them anyways. So the fact that they did pick a lighter blue like this as the shimmer does make sense. But hopefully this is helpful. If you want me to continue doing these breakdowns, it took me several days to compile the information for the list, as well as, you know, Sylvia going through her book and translating everything from Portuguese to English, and then typing it all up into my Word file so that I had access to it, because I shared my file with her. And so it was quite a bit of work. I will make a Google document, or make this a blog, so that you can see the entire post on my blog spot about all of the Capricorn information that I compiled, as well as what Sylvia pulled. I need to get what book this is from her, so that you can, you know, hopefully find it. Granted, it's going to be in Portuguese, but maybe they have like an English version of it, and that way you can see how different her book was versus some of the online research that I did. I did pull several of my books, but a lot of my books were talking about relationships and who they should and shouldn't date, so it is what it is. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's different of a swatch video for me, but if you want to see me do like 2 looks using the shades that I think Capricorn should also have in it, using some of these shades, let me know, because I'm more than happy to. Because I would be interested to see, you know, what a look with maybe a neutral, one of the Capricorn browns and like this green and this green would look like together, or some of the like the olive brown shades with maybe some of these like purples over them. I wonder what that would look like together. So makeup is just for fun. It's just experimentation. Hopefully you guys enjoy. My name is Rebecca Oberstadt. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Leave me your birth sign as a comment, what sign you are. I'm a Libra, so it's going to be a while before I get there. But I will see you guys in tomorrow's video. Have a great day or night wherever you are. Bye.